The White Sox can't keep thinking internal improvement and minor signings are the proper repairs that will fix a bullpen that's just been busted for years.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Todd Welter, and welcome to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm a lifelong Sox fan and been podcasting here for over 2 seasons, and I've also covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And on today's show, I'll get to Sam Antonacci continuing to garner more esteem in this week's Minor League Monday segment after I honor the life of White Sox pitching great Wilbur Wood, who passed away yesterday. But first, let's tackle a couple of bullpen arms that the White Sox should pursue, since this internal improvement and making minor additions might not be enough to win more close games in 2026. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, so visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. So internal improvement is the theme of the 2026 season, but it has to be more than just overall production improvement for the White Sox to make another jump in the win column. It means getting better in close games. That means the defense must be better. That means the timely hits have to go more the White Sox way. And the bullpen's got to do better in high leverage situations. And right now, the White Sox are only applying minor signings to upgrade a bullpen that was terrible at protecting leads. I mean, I get the thinking that Jordan Leasure and Grant Taylor finishing the 2025 season strong will hopefully carry over into this season, and that can definitely help the White Sox in high leverage situations. And Mike Vasil, he can also potentially be deployed in high leverage for multiple innings. But here's the thing. They're all right-handed. The White Sox could use a southpaw high leverage guy, and unless they sign another starter to move Sean Newcomb to the bullpen, they don't have many options. Tyler Gilbert and Brandon Eisert. Not exactly a juggernaut of clutch, you know? And then they go out and make a minor league signing like Ryan Borucki. And that isn't really going to upgrade the high leverage spot from a left-handed pitcher there that they really need. I mean, I'm fine with taking a flyer on the Mundelein native, and a minor league deal with an invite to camp is always a good deal, unless they're like serious character issues. And he does have experience with 187 games pitched in the big leagues, with 166 of those coming in relief, although his overall career ERA is 4.28. And here's the warts that he has per MLB trade rumors. Borucki has plenty to prove himself. However, as his struggles against right-handed batters and his inability to keep the ball in the park have led to middling results. Over 256 and a third career innings in the show, Borucki has a 4.28 ERA, a 19.7 K percentage, and an 8.9% walk percentage. While Borucki has been prone to allowing home runs, he's done a good job of avoiding fly balls in general, with a 51.8 grounder rate over 135 and a third innings from 2021 to 25. In 25, Borucki posted a 4.63 ERA, 22% strikeout rate, and 11% walk rate over 35 innings with the Pirates and the Blue Jays, while missing about 6 weeks due to a back injury. So he also has injury issues. So that's another thing. And he does fit the White Sox love for ground ball pitchers. And he actually does throw harder than Eisert, but his velocity is still around 94. So he's pretty much average, where Eisert's more going to throw 90, 91. But again, if you throw 94, sometimes that's still enough velocity that if you miss with your fastball, you can still maybe get a swing and a miss, or maybe a foul ball, where if Eisert misses on his fastball, when he really needs to rear back and throw it, he's either going to airmail it like he did in one of those high leverage situations that he ended up blowing the lead, or it's going to get tattooed. But here's the thing. Borucki's numbers suggest he's more of a low leverage pitcher. So I see him competing with Eisert for more of that role, the low leverage lefty. But you need to get better in high leverage, because remember, the White Sox went 15 and 36 in single run games in 2025. Pitching blew 50 leads. Now, some of that was on the rotation, but the White Sox did blow 24 save chances, and they only had just 25 team saves. The team had the 4th worst ERA in high leverage situations. And at one point, I remember doing the shows, they were dead last in the majors. Now, hopefully you get internal improvement in that area. That Grant Taylor and Jordan Leasure and Mike Vassell can get those outs. And I know they're very high on Alexander Alberto that they just took out of the Rule 5. But again, he needs to be eased in. And I would still like to see at least one veteran southpaw added on a major league deal. It doesn't have to be like this major signing, but it can't just be a minor league signing with an invite to camp, because that's basically what they're doing. They traded for Chris Murphy. And again, he's got options. He might be organizational depth. And then Borucki. So I know justbaseball.com, they've suggested Danny Coulombe. He had a 2.30 ERA with a 1.16 whip for Texas last season. He's a veteran who didn't throw a ton, though, in high leverage in 2025. But opponents did have a 1.78 batting average with runners in scoring position against them. And per Baseball Reference, in late and close games, opponents' batting average was 190. And opponents had a 216 average in high leverage situations per Fangraphs. So, okay. Or how about Jalen Beeks? 3.77 ERA in 61 games for the Diamondbacks. Although a 5.93 ERA in high leverage, but his FIP in high leverage situations was in the threes. And the opponent average with runners in scoring position was 200. And opponent's batting average was 206 in high leverage situations. I know Taylor Rogers was terrible for the Cubs after coming over in that trade deadline deal, but he might be worth seeing if he still has something left in the tank. He's a former closer too. And again, it's not like these guys are going to break the bank. I think most are projected. I think Rogers might and most project to make like $3 million per spot rack. And again, as you get closer to spring training, that price is only going to come down. And, there's nothing wrong with adding a lefty on a 1-year deal to get some proven production in tight situations, especially from a southpaw. Again, none of these guys are really like known as, hey, we're going to call on them in the toughest situations, but they've got experience. And as I pointed out, opponent's batting average with runners in scoring position is pretty good. And if they pitch well, you trade them at the deadline for a market that keeps rewarding bullpen help. But instead we keep going with these reclamation projects and giving runways. And it's not a terrible idea, but it should be blended because, for example, Dan Altavilla had a decent year for the Sox after throwing pretty solid in the minors, although remember the team released him. And the only reason why they brought him back was Miguel Castro tore up his knee. But still, pitches pretty well, especially around the trade deadline, and no one wanted him. And my hypothesis is there's probably still the concern of regression, but there's also not a huge body of work to say, yeah, this guy is going to help us out. They were probably thinking this is maybe just his high point. And look at what happened. Nobody really picked him up. So maybe get some guys who have a track record of getting outs to go along with kicking the tires on guys who might be able to do it if you give them a little bit of a runway. Well, Wilbur Wood was a White Sox legend during the 70s. He sadly passed away yesterday, so let's honor his legacy since there will be no Way Back Wednesday segment, and that is coming up next. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode, and FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get on the action during every NFL playoff game. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts you can apply to the bets you like most. Open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching. The boost gives you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. FanDuel's traditional money lines, spreads, and over-unders are always fun to play, but if you want to win some big-time money, play FanDuel's props, parlays, and futures. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, check out our new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed of Locked On White Sox compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. And I would love to talk White Sox baseball with you in the Discord chat, especially once the season starts, as we can discuss what is happening on game day, whether we love what's happening or loathing it. Go to lockedonwhitesox.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. I will say this. My old man didn't recall many tales of players from the late 60s and the 70s, but there was one player he would tell me about, and that is Wilbur Wood, the man who the team could rely on to throw 2,524 and a thirds innings over 12 seasons. Sadly, he passed away yesterday at the age of 84. And the tales I always heard was Wilbur was going to take the ball, and it was basically a day off for the bullpen. And he could go on like 2 days rest. His knuckler was that good. And if it was working, the White Sox had a great chance to win. And if it wasn't, well, he was at least going to eat up as many innings as possible. And if you look at his career numbers, it was either he was going to win the game or he was going to go down fighting in defeat. And he was darn good when the White Sox took him from relief to the starting rotation. And he had this run from 1971 to 1974, where he made 3 All-Star teams, won 20 games in each of those seasons. And that is when winning games matter for a pitcher, especially for him, because he was pretty much going to try to go the distance. He was going to throw as many innings as he could, and he could make potentially as many starts as he could, because again, he was throwing a knuckler. And his record in those years shows a guy who could win the game, or he was gonna wear it. He had no problem taking a defeat, especially when you look at his record. Each individual season from 71 to 74, 22-13 in 1971, and he finished third in the Cy Young. 24-17 in 72, finished his second. 24-20 in 73, and then he goes 20-19 in 74. He posted a career 163 and 148 record on the South Side with a career 3.18 ERA. And I kind of want to share you a snippet of what the Chicago Tribune just wrote up upon his passing. Wilbur Wood, who became a Chicago White Sox legend thanks to his rubber arm durability and baffling knuckleball, died Saturday in Burlington, Massachusetts. He was 84. The White Sox confirmed Wood's death, initially reported Sunday by the New York Times. Wood pitched 17 seasons in the major leagues, the final 12 with the White Sox, and he was a 3-time American League All-Star. He finished his career with 164 and 156 record, 114 complete games, 24 shutouts, and 57 saves. All three of his All-Star selections came in a 4-year span, 1971 to 74, with the Sox, in which he won 20-plus games every season and twice led the major leagues in innings pitched. From 1971 to 75, he made an incredible 224 starts. That's 44.8 per year. Born on October 22nd, 1941 in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Wood pitched his Belmont High School team to back-to-back state championships in 1959 and 1960. Quote, he was a real hotshot pitcher, remembered Roland Haymond, the former Sox executive who then was a minor league director for the Milwaukee Braves. I first met Wilbur in 1960 when our scout, Jeff Jones, sent him to Milwaukee for a tryout right after he graduated from high school. He was a fuzzy-faced, chubby little guy who didn't throw very hard. I watched him throw batting practice, but I couldn't get very excited about him. After his workout, I brought him up to the press room in County Stadium with my wife, and we fed him hot dogs. We did discover he had a good appetite. He was such a likable little guy. It was tough to tell him he didn't throw hard enough, and we weren't interested, end quote. Now, jumping ahead. In Wood's era, most teams went with a 4-man rotation, giving pitchers a minimum of 3 days rest between assignments. By the 1990s, the standards had changed to a 5-man rotation and 4 days rest. But in 1972, Wood started 25 games on only 2 days rest, winning 12 and permitting fewer than 2 earned runs per game. Quote, pitching coach Johnny Sain convinced Wilbur he could do it, said the late Chuck Tanner, who managed Wood with the Sox. When Sain was pitching for the Boston Braves, he once pitched 9 complete games in 25 days. He asked Wilbur if he would like to try it. We felt it took less effort to throw a knuckleball exclusively. We came up with the theory that the more you throw the knuckleball, the better it gets, and a starting pitcher will throw it a lot more pitches than a reliever. End quote. And well, I mean, they were right. You throw a knuckleballer, if he keeps throwing more knuckleballs, it's going to work. Knuckleballs, but remember back in the day, like Hoyt Wilhelm was a closer. They were more relievers. But then, kind of as you saw with Wood, the White Sox are like, let's start. Because if the ball's dancing, if you can get that knuckleball moving, like remember when Tim Wakefield was basically dazzling in the playoffs for the Boston Red Sox, it was an effective, lethal pitch. Now, to my everydayers who grew up in the 60s and 70s, I'm making an assumption, but this one probably hits hard. As again, the superstars from that era of the White Sox keep sadly passing away. I mean, you got Bill Melton, Dick Allen, and now Wilbur Wood. And if you think about it, those three players helped turn around the terrible fortune of the White Sox. I mean, I've got for those watching on YouTube, I've got the book, in the background, Chili Dog MVP. They had Dick Allen in 71 after nearly moving to Milwaukee. Bill Melton leads the league in home runs. And you got Wilbur Wood. And suddenly, Comiskey Park is the place to be from 71 to 74. I mean, it was happening. And again, that was a guy that my dad was telling me about. I got a lot of stories from the 50s. But Wilbur Wood was one of the few guys that I know my dad would tell me about. And while he never made the Hall of Fame, he was a darn good pitcher, and he was definitely a White Sox legend. So, yeah, White Sox world is a little saddened today. And there's going to be a portion of the fan base that's going to be mourning this even more. Especially, again, if you grew up with that kind of revival, with the Dick Allen White Sox and then the Southside Hitmen, with the Bill Veeck, trying to do whatever he can on those shoestring budgets to at least draw in a crowd when the White Sox were hip and cool. And you got this knuckleballer basically taking the ball every 2 days. I mean, could you imagine a pitcher now that is a starter taking the ball every 2 days? I mean, in theory, a knuckleballer could do it, but even Tim Wakefield didn't go every 2 days. And he's like really the last knuckleballer that I can think of that was really effective. I mean, I remember Charlie Huff pitching for the White Sox in the 90s. He was the fifth starter for a while. I think it was 91 or 92. And I always seem to recall, like, if I ever went to a White Sox game, at least every other game I went to, Charlie Huff was pitching. But hey, he could make, if he got that ball dancing, it's hard to hit a knuckler. So, I understand, and if you want leave, for those in that certain age that grew up with him, or that, obviously old enough and could definitely remember him, feel free to leave some, comments and some memories in the YouTube channel, or email me lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Well, the praise for White Sox prospect Sam Antonacci continues to come in, and let's discuss the latest he received on this week's Minor League Monday segment that's coming up next. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and the #1 sports podcast network. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. And if you haven't yet, sign up for the Everydayer Club. You can go to lockedonwhitesox.supercast.com. You get an ad-free audio podcast of the show and an invite to a members-only Discord chat where we can talk White Sox baseball. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, or wherever you get your audio podcasts, as we're on places such as Apple or Spotify. And make sure to check out my written content at SouthsideSox.com or OnTapSportsNet.com. All right, so MLB Pipeline just rolled out its top 10 second base prospects for 2026, And Sam Antonacci checked in at number 10. And the White Sox prospect had an outstanding 2025 season in the minors. And then he further enhanced his reputation with a great Arizona Fall League. I mean, if you go back to my October episodes, every Monday I was talking about what he was doing at the Arizona Fall League, and that was raking. And, you know, I know GM Chris Getz kind of mentioned that he might have an outside shot to make the opening day roster, especially if the team wants a left-handed bat off the bench. He's got a solid glove too, so I could see him kind of being maybe a bench guy. But to me, first, I still think he should be viewed as a potential long-term starting option at second base. And that means making sure he gets every day at bats. So that means he should go to the minors, because basically he should be the backup plan in case Chase Meidroth doesn't produce a better average than 270. And I still think, I mean, because again, I'm still high on Meidroth. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to take this as a slam on Chase Meidroth. But if Chase Meidroth hits 256 again and has a decent on-base percentage, that's still not enough offensive production. And, you know, yeah, he's a solid, you know, he's okay defensively at second, but you would like a better than bat-to-ball hitter in your lineup. And Sam Antonacci might be that better contact hitter. And again, the White Sox still need guys that can, you know, put the ball in play, get on base, and then obviously run the base as well. And I think Chase Meidroth can do that, but Sam Antonacci, he might run a little bit better. So that's why I do think you want to hold Chase Meidroth to a little bit of a higher standard. And if he doesn't reach it, you might want to say, especially if Sam Antonacci continues to produce, if he starts the year AAA and he produces really well at the plate again, you might have to consider that, hey, this guy could be the solution at second base instead, and Meidroth might be the utility guy. Because, again, Meidroth has cleared the bar that he is a Major League Baseball player. It's just to what extent? Because, again, he doesn't have a lot of power. He hits the ball to where they ain't. And if the defense makes adjustments, can he at least continue to drive the ball then over their heads, or drive the balls into the gaps that would be created based on the adjustments? And think about this too. For now, Sam Antonacci is in the same company as Travis Bazzana, the Guardians 2024 number 1 overall pick and the top second base prospect, and considered one of the best prospects in all of baseball. You know, a guy that the Guardians are counting on to hopefully make it by some point this season and help their offense that was actually not very good at all. Remember, the Guardians made the playoffs on pitching and defense, and they keep sustaining it, but at some point they are going to have to hit. So it's really good to see Antonacci in that, you know, in that company. And he was listed as the highest riser of that group on MLB Pipeline. And this is what they write. Antonacci has raised his profile significantly since not ranking on our White Sox top 30 a year ago. Since then, he's earned an all-star recognition in the High A South Atlantic League, won a championship in the Double A Southern League, ranked 4th in the minors in on-base percentage, 429, and starred in the AFL. And I also wonder how much he's going to rise up then in the White Sox top 30, at least among Pipeline, because he finished at 11th in 2025's MLB Pipeline ranking. So I wonder, does he crack the top 10? Now, in terms of promise, obviously George Wolcott and even Kyle Lodisi, they might have higher upside, although Lodisi was considered more high floor. And again, I think Antonacci is more high floor. I don't think this is a hot take. I'm not going to be out here saying, oh, this guy's a star, but I definitely think he has the potential to be a 1.5 to 2 F4 player with his ability to hit and play defense. I mean, I do think he'll reach that raised talent floor level. And again, I go back to, if Meidroth can't produce a good average, because both their value is going to be in hitting the ball, not crushing the ball. They don't have a ton of pop. Antonacci has a little bit more power, but even then it's probably 10 to 13 home runs. Maybe his career year is 15. But if Meidroth isn't in that 270, 280, 290 range, I think then at that point, you want to look at him maybe more as a utility guy and think at least Sam Antonacci does have the track record that he can be in the 270, 280, 290 range. Because it wouldn't shock me if he comes up and if he is in that higher tier of average. And again, I understand that for the traditionalists might be like, well, why are we talking about 270, 280, 290? We should want somebody that's 300, 330, blah, blah, blah. Remember, average, teams are looking again more at OPS. Can you do damage? Can you get on base? Whether it's a hit or a single, who cares? Just get on base. If you hit doubles, even better. If you hit home runs, that's what you want. Doubles and home runs. Create damage. Slug. Otherwise, on base percentage, and I know some people it drives you wild, but again, the only time I've always said that a hit really, really matters, like a single really matters compared to a walk, is runners in scoring position. So I think that Sam Antonacci could be, though, one of those traditional bat to balls, because you still need guys that can hit. I'm not saying that. And if Luis Arraez could play defense like Sam Antonacci, I would be fine if the White Sox had signed him. But Luis Arraez does not play good defense, and he does not run the bases well. Sam Antonacci has the potential to run the bases well. And that's why I've got no problem if the White Sox do want to hold Chase Meidroth to a higher standard, to say, let's see if you can hit 270, 280 and keep your your on-base percentage around 340, 350, 360, because that's the value you're going to get. You're not going to get a ton of slug. I would be stunned if Chase Meidroth ever has an OPS around 700 or 750. It might be in the 700, 720 range, because again, I just don't see his slug ever being around 400. His OPS is going to be made up mostly by his on-base percentage. And that's what, again, another way you can still default back to that average. If you got a high on-base percentage, decent to low slug, but if you've got that 270, 280 to 290 average, and we saw with Lenyn Sosa, then there's still some value there. But we saw Meidroth struggle sometimes at the plate. And I'm not going to go on, I'm going to go on a limb here. And I'm also going to wonder, should the White Sox start to see if Antonacci can play the outfield? And the reason why I'm throwing it out there into the universe is if Billy Carlson this year, 2025's first round pick becomes what we hope. And again, say the team does draft Rock Chwalski and Caleb Boneham also develops and Colson Montgomery is a true star. Someone's got to go to the outfield. And now maybe Rock's athleticism could put him there. He has a great arm. But where are you putting Antonacci? Because, he could stay at second, obviously. But I'd rather have more of my power, and my better defense, and Rock Chwalski and Billy Carlson. I think their gloves are much better than Sam Antonacci by all reports. So you might want to move Antonacci to the outfield because he doesn't hit for enough power to be a first baseman. I think Caleb Boneham is much bigger to be a first baseman. So that is, why not use the first half of the minors to see if Meidroth can be the everyday second baseman? Because again, he is a big leaguer, but he has to prove he's more than a utility player. And if he does, you could still have another path for Sam to be a big league contributor. And again, I hope they try to, take some of these infield prospects and give them some outfield run. It's something that I'm going to be preaching. See if Jarrell Perez and William Bergolla can track, fly balls. There's nothing to lose and everything to gain. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. I'll be back with your mailbag questions and comments. I hope you have a great day. And make sure you subscribe to Locked On White Sox on YouTube at Locked On White Sox, or follow or subscribe at wherever you get your audio podcast so you'll get all the latest episodes. The show is on places such as Apple or Spotify. You can follow the show on X, formerly Twitter, at Locked On Sox or at Todd J. Dub. You can also find the show on TikTok at Locked On White Sox. You can also email me your questions and comments to lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On White Sox ad-free, plus a members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwhitesox.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure your second listen is Locked On MLB.